Hi there and welcome to another video on the Flexible Atlassian Setup. In this video we are going to start working on the workflows. So just join me and let's jump into Jira and start building. So in the last video we created the issue types that we want to use. So in this video we are going to create the workflows. And we are going to create 3 workflows. So let's move over to settings and to issues first. And we have 2 different sections where we create workflows. We have the workflows themselves where we build the workflows, and then we have the workflow schemes. And the workflow schemes works the same way as the issue type schemes in our previous video. So they act as containers of configuration, and we then connect the workflow schemes to the projects. And that way we can work with the workflows individually while still having all of the workflows connected through the schemes. So we're going to start with workflows. And you will probably have more workflows than I have, but I've cleaned up most of the workflows. So we're going to go to Add Workflow and create new. And we're going to name this workflow. And we're going to start with the development workflow. And we can type in the description. I'm going to skip this for now, so it's a little bit faster. And by default, it will start with open. I have renamed that status to new in my instance because open doesn't really mean anything. It's open. What does that mean? So I prefer to have new, which means that everything that is created is new. So I know what kind of activity has actually occurred and what the status actually means something then. And when we think about development, we want to use what is known as the fetch and release principle. That means that as a developer, I want to fetch something from one status, drag it into an active status that I work on, and then release it then to another waiting status. So if we consider then what this workflow will actually do, we're going to start with having a work order that is new. It will then end up in a backlog. What do we do next? Well, the first thing we do is we work with the item until it is, we have all agreed that we know now enough about this issue so we can work on it. And the first status we're going to add is ready for development. And that means that we have all agreed on what should be done so we can actually start working on it. We have answered as many questions as we can. And I'm going to allow all status transition to this one because I want to have an open workflow. So I will click on add. I will put this one here. So now we have the transition, then I can now go from new and to ready for development when the agreement has been in place, that the requirement process has run its course and everyone thinks that this can now be developed. Now we want to have an active status for the developers. So we want to have in development. And again, I want to be able to move this one. We don't want to restrict the users so they can move anywhere they want. In development, and we're going to place that one below here. So we have those 2. There is one more status I want to add for development, but before I do that, I want to move on to the next step. Because the status that I'm going to add is not always going to be useful. So what do we do after we have developed? Well, in most cases, we either do testing ourselves, but there are also scenarios where we have external tests or separate test teams. So we want to give them also a waiting status. So ready for test. And I think you see where this is going. So the next status will be ready for test. And that means that the testers now know that this activity is ready to be tested. And we will also have an active in test. Again, allow all. And I'm going to do it like this. And in some cases, this is as far as you go. You test and then you deploy and then you're done. But I always add acceptance because acceptance should always be there. And so I'm going to use ready for acceptance and in acceptance. And this will do two things. One thing is that it will make sure that everyone understands that something needs to be accepted before it is actually completed. So even if you verify in tests that it works, and you have done your negative test, you've done your performance tests, you have done your end-to-end test, or whatever test you've done, that just means that it works, and it works as intended. Acceptance means that the people that have actually asked for this, the business side of things, have gone through it and they have looked through their acceptance criteria and their description of their need, and they say that this is now accepted as a solution for what we asked for. And the second thing this does is that you no longer need to have double close statuses, because it's very common that you have resolved and then closed, which means that you are basically saying I'm done when it comes to the resolved status. As a developer, I'm done, but I need someone to verify that I am done so you can close it. And this is exactly what these are. So now you just have them in the proper way. So you can see that these are actually activities, not something that is implicit. And then we're going to end with closed. And I like to add closed instead of done, because closed means that the development in itself is closed. You have completed the development. Because as you know, Jira is not a deployment tool, so we don't have any statuses for deployment or releases, because that is not part of the development workflow. That comes afterwards. And the reason for that is that you will have multiple front-end, multiple back-end tasks, and perhaps even building configured tasks that will all go out in a package that will be released or deployed. So it doesn't make any sense to have the deployments or release activities in this way. I know that it makes sense if you have a flat two-dimensional board, but Jira isn't a flat two-dimensional board, and we actually have a different, completely separate activity for releases and deploys in the projects. And you have both the connection to the code bases, and you have releases as an attribute, which actually have their own flow of how you release things. So we should not have that in the workflow for development. So this is now our new workflow. I can zoom in a little bit. In the next video, we're going to also connect screens to this one, especially for the close screen. So we actually can set a resolution for this. And we are also going to show you how to connect these screens. But I'm just going to show you, because now that we have an open workflow, if I resolve something here, so I actually will have the attribute of the resolved activity, and then I move it somewhere else, then you're actually going to have that one still crossed over in your board, even though it will move to a non-closed status. So we need to clear that one. So in order to clear something, you can just pick anyone. You can just have, new, I forgot to say that one. I didn't change that one when we started. New, you sometimes want to be able to move back to new. And so we need to add a transition for this one so everyone can move back to new. So what you do then is you click on this one, and you click on this box and say, allow all status to transition to this one. There you go. Now we can move new back to new from any other status. And we can actually use this one as an example. What I do is I click on the transition, the all transition, and then you will see that you get this little modal here with some options. So what we want to use is we want to use the post function, and in that one we want to change the resolution field so we can blank it out. If I click on that one, and then I can just go to add post function, and now I want to do update issue field, and then I want to select resolution, and I want to set the field value to none. And there you go. And now you will see that the resolution of this issue will be clear. And we do this for all the statuses. So you will have that for all of these in the workflow. So that is how we create development workflow. The next step will then be to go to workflow schemes to connect this one to a scheme. So first we want to create one. So we're going to call this, let's call it Flexible Atlassian Workflow Scheme. And we can add a description. I'm going to skip this for now. And the next thing we're going to do then is to say what workflow do we want to have for this one. And we get a standard one first. And next thing we want to do is add the workflows. So we're going to click Add Workflow, Add Existing. I'm going to look for our workflow that we just created. Let's see if I remember. Fast development workflow. And then we're going to select what issue types will use this workflow. We're going to have this one for backend development, build and configure, and we're not going to use it for defect, and we're not going to use it for feature, and we're not front end, incident, no, not incident either, sorry. And we want to have it for story, and that's it. So now we connected the development issue types that we want to have for the development workflow. So now I'm going to add also another one that I've already created, is the incident workflow. And we're going to connect that to defect, incident, and defect subtask. There we go. So now we have connected two different workflows, and I'm going to show you the incident workflow, so don't worry, I'm not going to skip that one. But we have two workflows now that is connected to specific issue types. So let's take the next step, and that is then to connect this workflow scheme to our project. So we're going to go to our demo project again. And we're going to go down to project settings and summary. And we're going to click workflow. And then we're going to use the switch scheme for this one. And then we're going to select the, let's see, the Flexible Atlassian Workflow Scheme. And we're going to associate. And now you're going to get all the issues that you have. Since we have made changes to the workflow, we're going to need to remap everything. So you're going to say in the existing workflow, we have something that is called done, and we want to map that to closed. We have something called to do, so we're going to change that to new. In progress will be in development, and so on. I'm not going to do all these because this is a demo project, but you simply remap all of these to the new statuses, and then you click Associate. And this one then will take care of it. You can click Refresh if you are impatient like me. And then you just click Acknowledge. And now all the issues in your project will have new statuses. Oh, no, they won't have that one because what we just did actually was all the statuses that we actually added is different from the one that you had in your board. We actually need to change the configuration in the board settings first. And we're going to go to columns. So you see here you have 3 yellow borders on this one with an exclamation. That means that they are no longer, they don't exist anymore. So we can just drag them out here and then they will vanish. And then we can drag the stages that we actually want to have. So closed and new. We can actually rename. And then we can have in acceptance, in development, in test, in triage. Need more information. You just drag them in like this. We're going to have separate videos where we set this one up. I'm just going to drag everything in so you can see that they are there. And then when we go back to the board, our issues will be there. There you go. And you can also see it in the sprint. So now if I drag it, this one didn't have any. So here you will see, depending on where we actually build this. Like I said, we will create the board in a separate video. But for now, this is how you do when you add workflows and how you add workflow schemes to the project that you have. Before we jump off, we're going to actually look at the issue. The incident workflow as well, so you can see what that one looks like. So let's zoom in a little bit. So as you can see here, we have, if we go from the other way, we can see that we have closed, we have ready for acceptance, ready for test, and ready for deployment. Those are exactly the same as we have in the development workflow. And what has been added is need more information in triage, because these are the ones that we use in the incident management. So these are the only thing that are different, because the rest are the development workflow. And I see we have pending here. We forgot to add that to our workflow. So let's go back and add that. So if you need to add something, you just go back here and you can add a new status called, what was it called? It was, I forgot which one it was. Do we have it here? Pending. And pending, what that does is that it's a waiting status that basically says if we get stuck for some reason, if we have, for example, a dependency or we need something before we can actually work on it, we can put it in pending. And the reason why we put it in pending in a specific column is that so we can track it, and so we can also talk about it if we need help. So a common case for putting it in pending is, for example, if we have a partner or a third-party supplier that are supposed to deliver something for us, but they haven't yet, then we can put it in pending. And also if we get stuck on something, for example, I can't continue this one because the documentation isn't updated to the latest version, and we place it in pending, and then we can take action on it in the team. So the last workflow we're going to do is the task workflow. So I'm going to create a new one. Task workflow. Again, I'm going to skip the description. Don't do that. Always write the description. But I'm lazy and it takes too long to do it on screen. So I'm just going to jump into the next one. So the task workflow, like we said in the previous video, is when you basically have checkboxes for yourself. And you only need 4 statuses here, basically. So the first one is new, which means that we just created it. The second one means then that we are in progress. And then we're going to have closed. And we want to have closed, we want to use the same closure status as we have in the development workflow. We could have done here if we wanted, but then we will have 2 statuses, 2 close statuses on the board. And since it makes sense that we close something, a task as well, we're going to use the same status for that. And the other one that we want to have is pending. So we have a pending here as well. So that way we can indicate to ourselves if we get stuck somewhere. And that's it. We don't need any more status for the task workflow. So now we can just attach that to the workflow schemes as well. And now we can add workflow, add existing. And we want to have this for our tasks. We want to have task and subtask. There we go. And now, as you can see, there are a lot of issue types that we have in our workflows that, or in our issue scheme that does not have a workflow now, which means that they will now be in the Jira workflow. So what I can do is if I add, for example, new issue types, then I want to attach them to a workflow. And that is when you use the assign. If I click assign here, then I can actually add more issues. So in this case, I want to have, for example, technical debt. I want to have investigation. And I want to have, oh, that's probably it. So I can add those to the same workflow. And then they will be added here as well. And then, since this is now an update to my workflow, I need to publish it. And you'll see I have 2 subtasks that is already assigned to other things. So now I can associate it with the new statuses and I can publish them. There we go. And I think I forgot to actually publish the fast development workflow that I updated. So you see, we don't have the pending there. So then I can go and change that in the workflow. You see that we have contains draft. That means that we have a change that we haven't published yet. So here in this workflow, I have the pending, and I now need to go to publish draft. And I can select, do you want to backup? And if you add backups, then you're going to have a lot of inactive workflows in your system. So if you're unsure if this one will work, then you can actually create a backup so you can roll back to it in case you made something wrong. Otherwise, click no and publish. And now if I go to my project and I go to project settings and I go to summary. So there we have it. Now we have our 4 workflows, and we're going to remove the Jira workflow later on with a different workflow for the epics. So that is how you create the workflows, and that is what the workflows look like. And you are welcome to have opinions if you think this is good or bad, and also if you have scenarios where you think that this does not work. This is a very simplified way of working, and the reason why we make it a simplified workflow is, of course, because we want it to be usable, regardless of what methodology or framework you're working with. So we have the transition of responsibility in this one, the processes, rather than a step-by-step workflow, which is usually in the form of a state diagram. And the reason why we don't want that is because we want to have a separation of the transitional items, those that will actually change responsibility, that will actually show that you are doing something else, and the ones that are producing items, which will be the subtask, where you will actually break down things for yourself, the different steps within each process. So that's it. Feel free to comment, like I said, and I hope you will have a great day.